Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in this video, I'm doing my August reading wrap-up. I read 3 books in August, but before that, I wanted to talk about the fact that I finished watching My Lady Jane this month as well. Last month, I read and started watching My Lady Jane, but I had not finished the show yet, and now I have. And I enjoyed the show quite a bit more than the book, actually. I felt like I enjoyed a lot of the characters more in the show. And also, kind of the big thing is, in the book, it's a retelling of Lady Jane Grey, who was Queen of England for 9 days, but was then beheaded. And the kind of concept of the book is that the authors want to give her a happy ending, but in doing this, they kind of take out all of the stakes and all of the tension in the story. And in the show, it seems, it's still gonna have a happy ending. Everything wasn't resolved at the end of season 1 like it was at the end of the book, but I think a happy ending is still in the works if we even get a season 2. It has been canceled, but fans are vying to rescue it. But they manage to do it in a way where it still feels like really bad things could happen, whereas in the book it just didn't feel like that at all. So yes, I enjoyed the show quite a bit more. I hope that we get a season 2. But I would be interested to see if the show ever does move on from Jane and do the other characters that are a part of the series. Doesn't seem likely since season 1, it has already been canceled. But anyways, moving into the books that I read in August, this was a huge Rainbow Rowell month for me. First, I finally read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and this is a series that I have been sort of avoiding for years. I kind of wanted to read all of Rainbow's books, but at the same time, some stuff about this book that just made me think I wasn't going to enjoy it. For anyone who doesn't know, this series is kind of a spin-off of Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. In Fangirl, our main character is a huge fan of the Simon Snow series, which is this fictional series that exists within Fangirl that is very much like a send-up of Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, kind of all of the big fantasies of the early 2000s, most especially Harry Potter. And then a few years after Fangirl came out, Rainbow released Carry On, which is the fictional series from Fangirl, kind of, with an asterisk. It is that series if it had been written by Rainbow rather than the fictional author it was written by in the Fangirl universe, if that makes sense. So the reason that I was sort of hesitant to read the Carry On series is because honestly, the excerpts from the series in Fangirl were my least favorite parts of Fangirl. I found the magic system just ridiculous, and it just wasn't really what I was there for in the book. And just the fan fiction aspect of it I didn't really enjoy because I am not a fan fiction writer. So yeah, basically I didn't think I would like Carry On. But it's still a Rainbow book, so I did still have this lingering feeling that I needed to read it, and I finally did. And I did not disenjoy it as much as I thought I would. First of all, the magic system gets explained a little bit more in the actual Carry On series than it did in Fangirl, and it did grow on me. I did like it better once I understood it better. It still comes across a little bit strange and awkward at times, but I did actually like the concept behind it once I understood the concept a little more. So the magic system for the Carry On universe is that words that get repeated a lot by a lot of people become more powerful and you can use them to make spells. So think like song lyrics, idioms, just anything that a lot of people in the world say a lot. And then also, because it is dependent on people repeating these words all the time, there are some spells that can kind of die, like they don't work anymore because people don't say them anymore. So it's actually a pretty cool concept for a magic system, but at the same time it can come across as a little bit awkward at times when characters are just saying kind of random normal words and using that as magic rather than having like a different language for the magic system, just because I think that's what I'm used to. That's what most people are used to when it comes to fantasy books. So that part didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. The fan fiction feeling to the story did still bother me a fair amount. Again, I'm just not a fan fiction reader, and this does definitely read like fan fiction, and it bothered me. But those two elements aside, the book for me was fine. It was okay. Actually, all of the books I read this month, I rated the same, 3.5 stars across the board. Every book I read this month was fine, it was good, but nothing spectacular. The only character that I really enjoyed reading was Baz, which I think is a pretty common thing. I think Baz is kind of the most popular for the most part. So yeah, I am planning to finish the series because I did like it well enough, but it's definitely not gonna be my favorite rainbow book ever. So that was the first book I read this month. After that, I went to an event for the release of Rainbow Rowell's new book, Slow Dance, and this was wild. So I have mentioned on my channel before that Rainbow is from Nebraska, I'm from Nebraska. Fangirl is literally like reading about myself. Very introverted main character who attends college at UNL, which is where I went to college. Huge fan of Harry Potter, essentially, which I was as well. And just the way that her introversion works is just so similar to mine. And then also there's just like a crazy amount of like really little coincidental details. Like, as an example, the main character's dad's boss is a man named Kelly, which I think Kelly tends to be more of a girl's name. At the time, my dad's boss was named Kelly and was a man. And there were like at least 10 of like that level of coincidence in this book. So fast forward to Slow Dance. At the time of this event, there was a big storm in Nebraska, which is where the event was. And most of the power was knocked out citywide, and we thought the event was gonna get canceled, or not canceled, but you know, rescheduled. And it was down to the last minute. We were getting emails from the event coordinators the day before saying, we haven't found a new venue yet. We will let you know as soon as possible on the day of the event whether or not it's moving to a different location or if it's getting rescheduled. So I wake up the morning of the event at like 6 a.m. I'm like, I'm sure they haven't emailed yet, but I'll check my email real quick because I'm awake. And I had an email saying the event had been moved to the Rose Theater in Omaha, which is a children's theater. I'm gonna put this over here. A children's theater in Omaha that I just so happen to do classes at from the ages of 12 to 18. I did my high school senior internship at that theater. It's my favorite building on the entire planet. It's also just a beautiful building. So that was just wild that I woke up to that email. And then Rainbow posts on her Instagram a few hours later about the change in venue and mentions that the main character of the book works at the Rose Theater and a pretty pivotal scene happens on the main stage of the theater. So truly, she did it again. This book, just huge personal connections for me, just like Fangirl. So that was very exciting. And I had the best time going to visit my favorite building for this event. And so, of course, Slow Dance is the next book that I read in August. But like truly, if you ever want to just read a big outline of my entire life, Eleanor and Park, before I was born. Eleanor, very, very similar to my mother. Slow Dance kind of covers my high school years, with the Rose being a central part of the book. It wasn't as big a part of the book as I hoped, but it was there. And then again, the main character is very introverted in a very different way than Kath. But so Kath covers like one aspect of my introversion, and Shiloh, the main character in this one, really shows a different aspect of my introversion. So connected with both of these characters in big ways in the introversion department. And then of course, Fangirl, as we've discussed, really covers my college years. And then Attachments by Rainbow Rowell is all about a newspaper workplace romance, which I met my husband working at a newspaper. The only one that I feel doesn't really connect with me on any sort of deep personal level is Landline, but I have only read this one once, so I kind of want to reread it and see if I can find anything. But yeah, just her books covering every aspect of my life. There were also some like smaller coincidences in Slow Dance, kind of like Fangirl. One interesting one, maybe just to me, was that in Fangirl, the main character's roommate is Reagan, and at the time my dad owned a horse named Reagan, and this one, the main character's daughter is named Juniper, and my brother owns a pig named Juniper. It's just weird, right? But anyways, enough talking about the weird coincidences in Rainbow Rowell books, and actually to talk about the book itself. As much as I obviously connected with the main character and enjoyed the setting and everything, this one was a bit slow, not to be punny. It is about two main characters, Shiloh and Carrie, who were best friends in high school, but Carrie ends up joining the Navy and they have this big fight right before he goes off to be in the Navy, and they don't talk for like 15 years. And then they see each other again at their mutual best friend's wedding, and they reconnect, and it's a romance, so not to give anything away, but they fall in love, obviously. I think based on the event that I attended where Rainbow talked about the book, I think this one is maybe pulled the most from her life of any of her books. The inspiration for the book was her and her husband had never dated in high school or college, but they were best friends throughout and then ended up falling in love. And they also had a mutual best friend, and when the three of them hang out, it feels like high school for her. And so that was kind of the inspiration points for the book. But yeah, I think because of that, it just wasn't very plotty, and it was also obviously a very slow burn romance, technically over the course of like 15 years. Definitely a slow read. Without the personal connections to it, I might not have cared as much. And so it got a 3.5 stars, just like Carry On did. Obviously this series I have very little of those weird personal connections to, because it's a fantasy series and it does not take place in Nebraska. Also at that Rainbow Rowell event, I did purchase her short story collection, Scattered Showers, which I'm currently working on. I don't typically enjoy short story collections, so I'm trying, instead of just reading it straight through, I'm reading one story between each book that I read until I finish it, just to see if that helps me enjoy it a little more. I think jumping from short story to short story so quickly is part of why I don't enjoy short story collections. So this will probably be in my either September or October reading wrap up. But it is just gorgeous, isn't it? So the final book that I read in August was a pick from my husband, and that was The Witcher. And this was my first interaction with the Witcher series. I did start watching the first episode with my husband when the TV show came out, but I fell asleep like 10 minutes in, and I have not played the game at all, so this was my first real interaction. He did not love the TV show, but he does love the game. And I enjoyed this well enough. This was another one that I didn't know how much I would like it. It's fantasy, but I've always felt like it's very boy fantasy for some reason, even though I know of plenty of female booktubers who enjoy The Witcher. But this one was kind of a short story collection in a way. In the book, The Witcher is like injured at the beginning, and he's getting like treatment from these priestesses, and he keeps like telling them stories from his life. Except sometimes the transition from like where he's being treated to the story is not as clear as that. Sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't. That was one of the things that kind of annoyed me about it. But I think having that little bit of a connecting thread did help me enjoy it more than like just a short story collection typically I would enjoy. And it was just very action-packed and fun for the most part. And I didn't realize how heavily it pulled from fairy tales. Obviously it's fantasy, and all fantasy kind of is mixed in with fairy tales and stuff, but some of these were very direct. One of the stories was pretty much a straight up Beauty and the Beast retelling. One had a lot of Snow White vibes. We had just like a little mention of Cinderella and Rapunzel. One was pretty fully Rumpelstiltskin. So that was fun for me. I like fairy tales. The Rumpelstiltskin one, it was kind of funny. It was like he was trying to subvert the trope a bit of like babies being promised to people by having like when the person comes to collect the now grown child, ends up turning out that like the child is the one who has to agree to the deal rather than the parents. But spoilers for that part of the book, it ends up being that the guy has been like dating the girl who was promised to him the day she was born for a year, but she's 15, which means they started dating when she was 14. He's at least in his 30s, if not 40s or 50s. So doesn't really subvert the trope as much as I think he was going for, which is fine. It's whatever. It's based on fairy tales. That's how they were. But I just thought it was kind of funny. That was actually my favorite story in the book because I really liked the queen. But yeah, again, 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a fun time, but it's not like a new favorite or anything. I do plan to continue with the series someday. And that was it for all of the books that I read in August. Big, exciting Rainbow Rowell month for me, and obviously for a lot of other people. I know she's a lot of people's one of their top authors. Let me know down below if you have gotten and or read Slow Dance. I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember, words matter.